Many of you already know that there are there are 4 New Years in rabbinic and Jewish tradition, rabbinic tradition. The 4 New Years are the New Year of the trees. We have the New Year of the animals, which just passed about 5 weeks ago. We should do more with the New Year of animals, and more than maybe just pet Shabbat. We should really honor it. And then we have 2 other New Years. We have the New Year that inaugurates the month of Pesach, of Passover, because it is on that New Year that we gain our freedom. And you don't have control of your time unless you are free. And those who are oppressed know there is no new year for them when they don't have control of their time. And then, 6 months later, we have Rosh Hashanah, another new year. And as you may have noticed in Jewish tradition, we are very cyclical, right? We're just coming down the home stretch of Deuteronomy, and we get to Kol Nidrei, and we get to Yom Kippur, and then all of a sudden we're just starting right over again with Sukkot and living in nature and reading about the creation of nature at Simchat Torah and getting the new seasons, and everything keeps going around in a cycle, right? We wander and we wander and we wander in the wilderness, and the promised land is always there, and we're always in the process of getting there. So the 2 New Years, the beginning of freedom, and Rosh Hashanah, 6 months, diametrically opposed in the circle, are strongly linked. For on Pesach, we're supposed to be asking, what is freedom? And how are we free? And how are others free? And on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of awe, we're supposed to be asking, how have I used my freedom? And how can I use my freedom in the coming year? The Seder, as you well know, was transformed into a Hellenistic symposium by the Talmudic rabbis in order to pose and solicit Socratic dialogue and come to conclusions about the great human question, not what is love, what is friendship, but what is freedom? And the question is pursued as a group and philosophically and personally in the Seder. Ironically, our answers to that question in our Seders rarely come to a conclusion that our sages of blessed memory would support. The sages see freedom as a momentary state, not a chronic or a static state. In the terms of 20th century philosopher Isaiah Berlin, the freedom that adolescents crave and that Americans celebrate is the freedom not to be interfered with. But the truest freedom is the freedom to create something over time, a creation that has values embedded within it. Our country is still learning something about that kind of freedom. It's what you do with your freedom that defines it. To define it by the negative, by the perpetual insistence that no one's telling you what to do, is both immature and ultimately untrue. Why? So think of it this way. I speak from personal experience when I tell you that I know I have the freedom to develop an exercise regimen. But if I don't do that, why celebrate the freedom? Is it real? I have the freedom to help the poor, but how much am I doing that? Why celebrate the freedom? We can celebrate the freedom on Rosh Hashanah, before Pesach, but why celebrate that freedom now? What have I done with the freedom? It's the freedom to create a project infused with values over time, as Deborah was saying in her remarks. I have the freedom to develop more harmonious communication patterns with my spouse. We have a great marriage, but I should be getting out Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication book, which has helped us in the past before we had kids, and even work through the workbook, which we've never done. And it would seriously make true the prayers in the liturgy that we're saying, at least for me, but I don't. So isn't it a bit strange to celebrate the freedom we have to do all sorts of things that we don't do? Wouldn't it make more sense to celebrate the freedom that produces the creation of that which is praiseworthy? During the days of awe, are we celebrating in the liturgy our freedom to change? But we're not changing. Is the liturgy challenging us to use our freedom to create something in order to make freedom real? Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said profoundly and truly, unfree people are horrified by the suggestion that they are unfree. They do not want to hear nor acknowledge what we all know from human nature and from direct knowledge in our own lives, that, quote, life is not a neutral ground. In this life of ours, the undirected goes astray. The haphazard becomes chaotic. What is left to chance is abandoned. I understood this firsthand during the epiphany I had when dropping off my children at the Young Fours preschool, TK, whatever, Young Fours, when they were little. And I know I've shared with a few of you this story before, maybe because I don't have an endless amount of epiphanies. And I feel like part of what faith is what Heschel said. Faith is keeping faith with our moments of insight that have been granted to us. So I remember it was so beautiful. They're so cute, right? You can't drop them off. You have to get out with them. You walk them up to the little gate that's about this high, and where all adults are, and they go in each one, and the TK and the Young Ford teachers welcome them, and you're trying to take pictures, and I'm hiding all my crying and all these things. And they finally go in to their little room. That's their own little cute little bathroom, their own little garden. It's all nice and separate. And then the door shuts. And you wipe away the tears, and you're in this profound state of vulnerability, like on High Holy Days. And then people turn to me, and they say, so, is your daughter enrolled in Young Five soccer? And did you know that if she's not, there are only 2 spots left, and if you don't get to it, then you can't get to it in kindergarten soccer, and then they can't do the program over the summer, and then it's already, trust me, this has never happened in Ann Arbor that I've missed a deadline for signing up kids for something in this town. That's a joke, because I have missed every deadline for signing up kids to do things in this town. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, do you know it's little Brian's birthday party at the park on Saturday, and everyone's going to be there? And I'm like, they're 4. But there's going to be a jumpy, and there may even be a magician, and everyone's going to be there, and you should be there too, because everyone's going to be there, and put it on your calendar. And suddenly I'm sitting there finding out, and then don't even get me started on dance lessons, because if they don't start with the tutu thing, then they can't get to hip hop, and then they can't just freely express their personality in free expression class when they're in 5th grade. Because obviously 4-year-olds don't know how to express their inner personality freely in dance, so we have to make sure they get there. And I immediately realized that my calendar would completely fill up serving other gods. And the only thing that I knew in that moment was thank God for Shabbat. Because I knew at least the first thing I could say is we can't go on Saturday, all right? And then I saw a couple of families saying we can't go on Sunday. And we made eye contact. And I also had to step back because I saw how my calendar was going to fill up forever. And I felt so grateful to be a Jew. And I felt so grateful because my freedom is wrapped up in projects to create something infused with values, created by the gift of the wisdom of my ancestors. God bless them. The freedom to create, the freedom to choose, is a momentary state. I was in that moment. In these moments of decision, we decide whom we will be in service to. It's those moments I say, am I going to marry this person? Because if I do have some freedom here before I do it, but there's not as much freedom afterward. because I've chosen and made a commitment to someone whom I will serve. Will I serve the gods of my children's extracurricular activities as defined by the parents at the school? Will I serve the God of the traditions of Judaism, of my ancestors? Moments of freedom of decision to basically decide what patterns we will live, almost like the tributaries of the Nile, which routes we will go round and round and round on. So I mentioned a potential marriage partner moment. Not all of us marry. How about the grandparent moment, where one had one image of what their retirement years were going to be, and they have a moment of freedom. They have this temporary state, and they find themselves saying, yes, I will move to be near you, or you, if you move to be near me, I will do childcare 3 days a week. And then they add in date night, so it's 3 days and a night, and they don't have time or energy to cook Shabbos dinner, so it's 3 days a night and Friday night Shabbos dinner, leftovers on Saturday afternoon, and entertaining the kids. Life is suddenly filled with service to the family. One ought not to overemphasize one's freedom to choose ways to spend time when one is already living the service one has committed to, often without understanding it consciously. Parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents serve their children. Some of us in the sandwich generation, as the fifth commandment tells us, we serve our parents. Teachers serve their students. Healthcare workers serve their patients. Everyone working in an organization serves their clients. The people they have agreed to serve. So true freedom, according to the rabbis and sages of blessed memory, is the following. And they're assuming that we're going to get there in the Passover Seder, which is very sweet. That true freedom is serving God. Because they don't use the word freedom per se, they use the word being redeemed from serving who you do not wish to serve and being granted the freedom to serve God. Avodah, service. I don't know if I can beat Deborah for the number of times chesed appears, but I've been paying attention to how many times the word service appears in the liturgy, how we serve. So here is my challenge to you to take into your fast and into tomorrow morning. How are you serving those you have chosen to serve? And are you serving God at the same time? Because all serving must involve God. Not in the way we see religion on TV with, oh, do you believe in God? Or, I don't know, this is, if you buy food with a hechsher, then you're serving God. It means that in each part of our life, our question is, when I am serving, am I also serving God? We Jews are good at saying what are the details of a mitzvah, like a clever child at the Seder, and we are bad at being the simple child, saying, how can I serve God in what I'm doing? It means saying, when I am serving, what is my mission here? Is it to get the kids to school? Is it to make my kids happy? Is it to get them into college? Is it to help them fulfill their athletic or extracurricular potential? Is that the mission God has for me? Or is it it's our mission to babysit for God? Our mission to raise our children strong in values and mental spiritual practices, have them experience the bumps and difficulties of life, and apprentice them into solving their own problems rather than us solving them for them. Our children are sent to us from God, and we are to raise them for God, and that is how we serve them. How do I bring holiness into my projects? That's the days of awe, as opposed to the New Year of Passover. How do I bring holiness into the projects in which I'm serving in the use of my freedom that I committed to? How do I remember my mission within the schedule structures I already inhabit? As one wise minyan goer once told me, Rabbi, it's really simple, my view on Judaism. God knows who you are by your calendar and by your checkbook. Okay, that was a little bit before online payments, but you know what I mean. How do I serve with my checkbook? When I reach my deathbed, will I ever regret making donations to the nonprofits whose missions and projects I'm supporting? Will I ever regret writing a check to the community share farm when I didn't really want to eat 3 bales of kale? I kept that farm going, right? Don't regret it. And how will my calendar be filled? So I'm serving the missions that God is giving me. And I introspect to open up to that. And you do when you pay your membership dues and donations. You are serving the temple and not just asking the temple to serve you and those who show up to Minyan and those who read Torah and those who are volunteering on committees and those who help at the school and those who help in so many ways. You are serving and not just being served. Your patients, your customers, your students, your siblings, your friends, your grandchildren or children, yourself. When you do the al-Chet and you see those things, those are the ways we are not serving God when we are serving others. So I ask you to use the holiday. Whom are you serving? And you serve God by serving them in a better and more holy way. Gemar Tov.